It's hot. It's hot out. Chryso friends, welcome back to Opus Alani, where we are doing Viking stuff this month. As you may know by the fact that all of the big corporations' user pics look like a unicorn threw up on them, it's Pride Month, and I am here with a two-part project to celebrate it. I thought a lot about how I wanted to approach this project. I haven't talked out loud a lot, at least in public, about my own relationship to queerness. Part of that is because I'm still navigating what it means to be a relatively public figure and how much of my life I want or need to keep private. And part of that is because I came late to even considering that I have a relationship with queerness at all. I've always tried to be welcoming and supportive of people in the LGBTQ+ community, but I never actually thought that I had any place in it myself. Until I heard of demisexuality, which exists on the asexual spectrum and means that you don't experience sexual attraction without an emotional connection. Growing up, I never really had crushes on celebrities, at least not to the extent and depth that my friends did, and I never really had an overtly sexual attraction to people I didn't know. Which is not to say that I didn't construct personalities for people in my mind that I would then be attracted to in that way. But when I realized that there was an actual name for the way attraction and desire works for me, it was pretty mind-blowing. And that's not even touching on my bisexuality, or at least bi-romanticism. So, in honor of Pride Month and the queer community, and me finding my own place in it and no longer feeling broken, frigid, worthless, or not queer enough, I'm going to make a Viking kit in the demisexual flag colors. Some other costumers are also making clothing that celebrates their own beautiful queerness this month, so please be sure to check them out in the playlist below and on Instagram under the hashtag CosPride. Obviously, this is where I make my standard disclaimer. All of my croissants should be used to it by now, but just in case we have some newcomers, here it is. This space is LGBTQ+ affirming. Here we know that love is love and trans rights are human rights, and that the first Pride was a riot. Queer people have existed forever, and even though they may not have the same words to describe their experiences or the same relationship to queerness that we do today, that does not invalidate the validity of seeking connection and kinship with our queer ancestors throughout history. If that bothers you, leave. This isn't your space. And now that we have that out of the way, everyone grab your cuppa. Today, I am drinking Caduceus Clay, a floral green tea with a hint of strawberries by Tabletop Teas. Caduceus is a character from Critical Role that is both asexual and aromantic, so it seemed a pretty spot-on choice for this video. Let's get into it. I made a sketch of the outfit I'm going to be sewing this week. It will be 2 items, a rectangularly constructed dress made from gray linen and a hood made from purple linen based on an archaeological find from Skjoldehamn, Norway. I'm going to get started on the hood first since that's the simpler item to construct. In fact, it's probably the simplest thing I've ever made aside from pillowcases and dice bags. The hood is made from 1 rectangle and 2 squares of fabric. The square side length should be between 9 and 12 inches long, depending on how much of your chest and back you want it to cover. The short side of the rectangle should be how deep you want the hood from the back of your head to the front opening. The longer side should be the length of the desired face opening plus the length of your square piece doubled, and then you'll need to add seam allowance. The measurements I used for mine were 9 inches for the square and 14 inches by 44 inches for the rectangle. When I'm all finished cutting the pieces out, I'll sew them together. The square pieces are inserted into the front and back of the hood diagonally, forming diamond shapes at the chest and back. The back seam of the hood is then sewn together, leaving the front of the hood open. I then felled the seam allowances and hemmed the face opening and bottom of the hood with a natural colored linen thread from Burnley and Trowbridge. And that's all there is to it. Please stick around after this brief commercial break. Now I'm ready to make the dress. It's the same basic shape as the block printed tunic I made in my last video, only longer. It has a rectangular body, tapered sleeves, underarm gussets, and gores on each side and in the front and back. This style of dress was found all over Europe as early as the Iron Age and into the 15th century, making it an incredibly versatile item of clothing. I'll start by measuring out all of the pieces. I've made so many similar dresses that I have it pretty down pat by now. I'm using the threads of the warp and weft to make sure that I'm cutting straight lines. I'm going to make this dress with a high rounded neckline with a slit down the front, often called a keyhole neckline, so I'll need to make a facing to ensure that the collar is sturdy and long lasting. I'm just going to use a few measurements to draft the facing: the width of my neck, the depth of my collarbones in front, and my standard 2-inch dip in the back. I'll add a nice curve around the neckline, the keyhole slit in the front, and 2 inches of width all around. To cut it out, I'll fold the facing in half to make sure that it's symmetrical. Time to start sewing the dress together. I'll begin by sewing the front and back together and then felling the shoulder seams. It's easier to do this before sewing the neckline facing on, which is actually what I'm going to do next. I'll cut around the facing, but I didn't cut out the hole in the middle. Instead, I'll sew the facing onto the dress using the inner line as a guide, and then I'll cut out the center of both pieces at once. Then I can turn the facing to the inside of the dress. Unlike the block printed tunic, this facing is practical, not decorative. Pin the edges under and sew it down to the inside of the dress by hand with a felling stitch. I forgot to film most of the sleeve and gusset process, but I went into that pretty extensively in the block printed tunic video if you want a refresher. Once the sleeves and gussets are all in, I can put on the proto dress and mark where the tops of all of the gore should be. And let production assistant Bran attack all of the trailing thread bits. After that, it's time to put in the side gores, making sure that the measurements match on both sides and that they all start at the same height. I'm a sucker for nicely matched side gore seams. Oh, and I should also note that as I'm sewing all of these seams, I'm felling them down as well. I forgot to film a lot of that since it usually happens at night in bed listening to audiobooks. Once the side gores are all in, I will fold the front and back pieces in half, finger pressing along the folds to make nice crisp lines that I can cut in order to insert the front and back gores. This is done in my usual way, sewing the top point in by hand and reinforcing the point with additional stitches before sewing the rest of the seam by machine. As always, if you're interested in learning how I set my gores, you can check out my video tutorial on the subject, which will be both in the cards and the description below. And the last thing to do is mark and cut the hem. I'm using the side seam as a guide, folding it in towards the center and marking the curved hem. Then I'll cut away the excess and sew the hem with a small felling stitch. And then we're ready for the reveal. Thank you all for coming along with me today, friends. I had a lot of fun making these, and it's always amazing to work on an outfit that can be worn by itself or layered under other items. In my next video, I will be making the apron dress and accessories to go along with the rest of this outfit and talking a bit more about queerness in the Viking era more specifically. Don't forget that Costume Symposium is only 70 days away on the weekend of August 19th or 22nd. Much like CocoVid last year, we will have videos, panels, live streams, and Instagram events. For more information and updates, you can follow Cozy on Instagram and Facebook, the links to both of which will be in the description box below. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button and be sure to subscribe if you haven't. I upload every other Friday, and you can click the little bell if you like playing the Russian roulette game that is YouTube notifications. If you'd like to find me on other social media, I am at OpusLNI everywhere, and I'll put all of those links in the description box below, along with a link to my Ko-fi, which has exclusive content for donors, as well as my web shop if you would like to help support Angry Production Assistant brand directly. Until next time, be kind, do the work, continue supporting marginalized people, and keep creating. Hwyl!